Good afternoon, 3:06 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up this hour, 3:30, Tristan Levitt is here from Empower Oversight. We talk about the IRS whistleblowers and the United States government admitting, no, they didn't break any laws when they revealed how the Biden administration was handling that Hunter Biden fiasco. Also, we'll get into a new report today from the Inspector General of the Justice Department saying, yes, the FBI has been punishing real whistleblowers under Biden. The details on that ahead as well. Brett Tolman will be here at 4 o'clock, former U.S. attorney. We get into Michael Cohen's ridiculous testimony in New York. It continues at this hour. Trump's attorneys now questioning Michael Cohen. The Senator Tommy Tuberville is here at 5 o'clock. He was there yesterday with President Trump. He's here today with us. And then Kate Anderson from the Daily Caller News Foundation at 5:30 with exclusive new reporting on the child mutilation industry. The videos they didn't want you to see or hear, we've got them ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Yeah, Michael Cohen, one-time attorney for Donald Trump, is now in day 2 of testimony in New York. And he's currently being questioned by President Trump's attorneys, that questioning beginning here in the last hour, as they are going to set out to show the jury just what a cartoon character this guy is and how out of control he is. He had a lot of testimony these last 2 days, and I'm seeing plenty of people indicate, plenty of attorneys indicate, this is a bad idea that the prosecution left Michael Cohen up for that long because it gives Trump's attorneys a lot of territory to cover as they conduct this cross-examination. And so as we get updates from inside of that courtroom, we'll bring them to you. From outside of the courtroom, we had President Trump this morning, as we do each day. This is what he had to say as he arrived at the courthouse today, once again being victimized by this process led by the left to interfere in the election.
There's never been anything like this in the history of our country. It's a scam. It's election interference at a level that's never taken place before.
Today, Donald Trump, not alone, accompanied by a number of Republicans, including the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who in a wise decision is showing up now alongside President Trump to stand up for decency in the justice system in the face of all of this tyranny. Here is Speaker Johnson today.
The crime that they are accusing President Trump of is falsification of business records. But I think everybody knows he is not the bookkeeper for his company. President Trump is innocent of these charges. And again, anyone with common sense can understand what is happening here. In the midst of all this nonsense and corruption, they have placed a ridiculous and unprecedented gag order on President Trump. They were overriding his constitutional right to defend himself from political smears from his harshest critics at the most important time. He is soon to be officially the nominee of one of the major parties in our country, running for president. And they have him tied up here in this ridiculous prosecution that is not about justice. It's all about politics, and everybody can see that. President Trump is leading in swing state polling. The American people see right through these politically motivated attacks. I've been in 102 cities in over half the states in the last few months. And I can tell you that no matter where we are around the country, I've been doing large events. People from all walks of life come to these events. And they are concerned about this. They are disgusted about this. They are fed up. They've had enough because they see what's happening.
Good to see Speaker Johnson doing this. I've had my fair share of criticism of his time as Speaker. This is not a moment to be critical of him. I'm glad he's doing this. Earlier this week, I mentioned that it shouldn't just be Rick Scott. It shouldn't just be J.D. Vance. It shouldn't just be Tommy Tuberville, who, again, is coming up at 5 o'clock this evening with us. But it should be all of these Republicans. This is the moment to lean in and fight back. This is what the American people want to see. It's certainly reflected in the polls. If you're holding your finger up in order to measure how the American people feel about this, they've already made up their mind. They're moving in Trump's direction as this thing goes along. Hop on board the train, fellas. It's too late to join the front of the parade. But now is the time. Get out there. So Speaker Johnson doing that today. Vivek Ramaswamy also back out in public today with a forceful and characteristically eloquent defense of Donald Trump and criticism of the bastardized justice system.
It's straight out of a Kafka novel. The prosecution's main strategy appears to be to bore the jurors into submission. And if you look in that direction, sadly, it may appear to actually be working. Now, I would like for anybody here in the press, anybody at home, anybody in MSNBC or the media afterwards, to clearly state what exactly is the crime that Donald Trump committed. Oh, wait.
It's not possible.
We have not heard a good answer to that question. It has been vague until today. You heard Michael Cohen's testimony, after which I would say it is less clear than ever what that crime actually was. They'll say falsifying business records. Well, let's look at who did we learn falsified business records today? Yet, what, hour, 2 hours, felt like it could have been 7 hours of Michael Cohen talking about how he falsified business records.
You know, imagine, I can imagine that Trump's attorneys are going to make an argument to this effect as they're conducting this cross-examination of Michael Cohen. Why is it that you're sitting here at the witness stand and not instead there at the defense table? How is it that Trump is the one who is guilty or stands accused of any of this when you're admitting you're the guy who did all of it? And in fact, to the extent that Trump had any involvement in whatever it is, because again, as Vivek cites here, there's not even really crimes specifically being laid out. They're sort of just wildly gestured to by the Manhattan DA, Alvin Bragg. So if to the extent that Trump is implicated anywhere, it's he listened to his lawyer's advice. That's you, Michael Cohen. That's you, buddy. Explain that, please. I imagine the defense is going to do something like that today.
Okay, so you have a guy who has been a perjurer in the past that is now saying he falsified business records. What is the crime that Donald Trump committed? Now, it appears to be what they might allege is some sort of bookkeeping error or whatever. The real bookkeeping that we need accounting of is Judge Merchan's own family member collecting millions of dollars as a Democratic operative, using the existence of this trial as a fundraising ploy for Democrats.
Yeah, that's an issue that Donald Trump is not allowed to raise. President Trump is forbidden, and all of his representatives are forbidden from even mentioning these details by the gag order, which the breaking news on that subject today, the gag order stays. The New York Appeals Court, a New York Appeals Court today, denied and dismissed President Trump's appeal of the gag order in the trial, finding that Judge Merchan properly determined the former president's public statements, quote, posed a significant threat to the integrity of the testimony of witnesses and potential witnesses. Now, no such gag order imposed on Stormy Daniels or Michael Cohen or Alvin Bragg or anybody else in this case, only on Donald Trump, the defendant, who's supposed to have the most rights protected in this proceeding. Instead, he gets the fewest. And he's running for president, and he's not allowed to fight back. He's tied up by the gag order. And so today, this intermediate appeals court in New York, at least for the moment, refusing to modify the gag order or to get rid of it, saying that the judge properly applied it, which is a lie. It's an unconstitutional pile of garbage. And this appeals court is allowing it to continue. Now, as far as the daughter is concerned, our show is not gagged. Vivek Ramaswamy, not gagged. This daughter, who has made millions by being a Democrat operative, working for the defeat of Donald Trump and Republicans like him all across the country. Here's the update for you today from Post Millennial, which has dug in on this subject. Dem operative daughter of New York City judge in Trump trial aided effort to kick Trump off of Colorado ballot. That's right. She was involved in the ballot rigging scheme in Colorado. Authentic Campaigns, the digital marketing and fundraising agency run by the daughter of the judge overseeing the falsified business records case against Trump, has been revealed to have worked with a group that has sought to take Trump off the ballot. Lauren Merchan's company worked with the Brennan Center for Justice, highlighted on the company's Our Work page. The Brennan Center for Justice filed an amicus brief in support of the Supreme Court rejecting Trump's appeal of the Colorado Supreme Court's decision to remove him from the ballot. Natalie Winters reported first for War Room. Quote, the brief urges the court to reject Trump's attempts to revive the independent state legislature theory on appeal, the Brennan Center wrote. The push to remove Trump ultimately failed in the high court, with the justices ruling 9-0 in favor of keeping him on the ballot. The center is still listed as an active client, with Authentic Campaigns appearing to have worked with the center since at least 2023. That's last year. Authentic Campaigns said it has boosted the organization's newsletter subscribers by 300,000 new names, a 204% increase, and seamlessly integrated diverse platforms and mediums to expand the Brennan Center's reach. Quote, each new subscriber was not a statistic, but a potential advocate and donor, thanks to the personalized and engaging content that illuminated the Brennan Center's pivotal role in shaping a just society, according to Authentic Campaigns. Again, this is the organization run by Judge Merchan's daughter. And she's got a lot of these varying conflicted clients. Here's an additional client, the Asia Society, a pro-China lobby group that sponsors Chinese Communist Party-funded Confucius Institutes in the United States. Quite fascinating connections this judge's family has. Her company's also received around $500,000 from the Arizona Democrat Party and Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer's Fight Like Hell PAC, as well as $4 million from Representative Adam Schiff. Yeah, his group has given money too. Adam Schiff has given money to Merchan's daughter, $4 million. In case you were wondering. Back to Vivek Ramaswamy today. He says this is the sign that we are becoming a third-rate banana republic.
This is not the United States of America. This is some third-rate banana republic. If this were happening in another country, we would be laughing at them as a sham democracy. I am ashamed as an American citizen to sit here in a courtroom watching the former leader of the free world, and let's be honest, likely next leader of the free world, sitting with the indignity in this dingy third-rate courtroom with fourth-rate prosecutors and a fifth-rate lawyer on the stand as a witness who actually is violating attorney-client privilege left and right. Nobody's even talking about that.
Yeah, that's a critical point. It's actually one that I wish I've had raised more throughout this. I have been thinking quite a bit about it, which is, Michael Cohen was Trump's attorney, and just because he's not currently serving as his attorney, in his capacity as being his lawyer, he's sworn to secrecy about the details that his client engaged him on. So how is it that he's testifying endlessly about their private conversations in an attorney-client environment? He's relentlessly violating attorney-client privilege. For a moment, let me also return back to Speaker Mike Johnson today. So as I mentioned, Speaker Johnson, you heard audio just a moment ago, was outside that courthouse in New York today, testifying on behalf of decency. And the Associated Press wrote it up today, and this is how they described it on their blog, which I've been following somewhat because there's no audio. You can't listen to this trial. So I've got to follow the writings of the people who are inside the courtroom, including the Associated Press. And here's what they say. The significance of Speaker Johnson's presence. The appearance of the House Speaker, second in line of succession to the president, is a politically stunning and significant show of Republican support for the indicted Trump, coming from the highest levels of party power. Johnson is using the powerful pulpit of the Speaker's office to attack and tear down the U.S. judicial system. Do the math on that for me. My guess is you probably had the same reflexive reaction I did. How dare you? You utter scum. You utter scum. So the Associated Press, in an act of political hatchetry, it's nonsense. It's literally the opposite of what Speaker Johnson's there for. Johnson's there to uphold the integrity of the justice system, to argue for it to be better, to not politicize its prosecutions, to not be frivolous and ridiculous and tyrannical. He wants it to be made whole. The Associated Press says that he's trying to tear down the system. Now, unless they mean tear down the corrupt system, well, then I'm all on board. But he's there to, quote, tear down the U.S. judicial system. What a bunch of fake news garbage this is. Now, the White House was asked about this today. Coringe was asked about this. What's going on in New York? What do you think of Speaker Johnson being there? Her answer, I had to listen to it twice before I realized what I was listening to. Deeply revealing about how the White House actually thinks about this whole thing against Trump. Coringe was asked today at the White House about Speaker Johnson appearing alongside Donald Trump outside of the courthouse in New York today. And here's how she answered. And listen to this. This really gives the whole game away. and is a sign that she is really dumb.
Was it appropriate for Speaker Johnson to show up at the trial of the former president today?
So look, I can't speak to, don't want to comment, obviously, as this is related to 2024 elections, and I can't speak to the speaker's schedule. That is something for him to decide on.
I'm sorry, what was that? So, did you say that the Speaker of the House attending a criminal trial in New York City for defendant President Donald J. Trump is related to the 2024 election? Did you hear that? Because the question never said anything about the 2024 election. In fact, the guy just straight up asked about Speaker Johnson attending, if she has any concerns about that. And her default was that this is election related. This is the 2024 election, so I'm not able to comment on it. One more. This is one of those things. I heard it on first pass. When I heard it today, I said, well, yeah, of course, obviously. And she's going to hide behind that thing. And it was Corey who turned to me and goes, but listen again. She's saying it's the election. I was like, wait a second. It's so obviously is the election to you and I. But at the White House, they've been playing this game of pretend where it's like, oh, it's not related to the election at all.
Was it appropriate for Speaker Johnson to show up at the trial of the former president today?
So look, I can't speak to, don't want to comment, obviously, as this is related to 2024 elections, and I can't speak to the speaker's schedule. That is something for him to decide on.
Yeah, it's the 2024 election. The judge's daughter is a part of ballot rigging schemes. Donald Trump is gagged from talking about it. The White House declares that it's all about the 2024 election. What more evidence do you need? Coming up, Tristan Levitt will be here moments from now. He's with Empower Oversight. We talked to him about the Biden administration retaliating against whistleblowers and admitting that the guys who blew the whistle on Hunter Biden, they're the real deal. Good afternoon to you. It is now 3:35 News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. So glad to have you with us. Brent Tolman will join us coming up at 4 o'clock, former U.S. attorney. We talked to him about the latest in that ongoing Alvin Bragg Democrat-led trial against Trump in New York. Tommy Tuberville, the U.S. senator, will be with us here at 5 o'clock. He was there standing alongside President Trump yesterday. And then Kate Anderson is here at 5:30, reporter for the Daily Caller News Foundation, with a jaw-dropping tranche of new information about the child mutilation industry, which is brazen, totally brazen. We've got the details ahead. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630 WMAL. A number of reports coming out today on the Biden administration's treatment of whistleblowers. For more on this, I want to bring in Tristan Levitt now, the president of Empower Oversight, who's all over this issue, to give us some sense of what's happening here. Hello, Tristan. Good to have you back with us.
Thanks. Glad to be with you, Vince.
I'll start with the news about Hunter Biden today. I know there's an ongoing court battle right now about Hunter Biden and his back tax payments and the alleged crimes he committed. But it revealed something kind of fascinating today, and I know you were highlighting it on X. What was that?
Well, about 2 months ago, there was a filing in California because Hunter Biden's attorneys had thrown some what they call motions to dismiss all over the place. So you've got legal proceedings going on, these prosecutions in California, you've got them going on in Delaware. And so his attorneys, among many things that they threw up on the wall, were these allegations that the IRS whistleblowers, Gary Shapley, who I represent, and Joe Ziegler, the other IRS whistleblower, that they had engaged in, the conduct that they should not have by blowing the whistle. And the government's response to that back in early March was with a filing from Special Counsel Weiss's office that seemed to imply or strongly suggest that the whistleblowers were actually under investigation. It said that the IRS had taken appropriate steps to deal with what they'd done, and it included a redacted portion of the filing, and it also included an attachment where one of the assistant prosecutors in Weiss's office talked about how an unspecified federal agency had asked that they redact these attachments in order to protect the integrity of their investigation. So for the last couple of months, that's been the subject of a lot of speculation. We wrote a 20-page letter to Attorney General Garland pointing out the major conflicts of interest because Weiss was one of the major subjects of the IRS whistleblowers' disclosures. They pointed out that he had done wrong. Gary Shapley has a pending complaint with the agency called the Office of Special Counsel, alleging that Weiss retaliated against him when he learned that Shapley had blown the whistle. So we've been trying to get at this, and there's been a lot of, there've been letters from Congress, there've been a lot of news stories on it. What we learned yesterday is that, in fact, the reference in there to an unspecified federal agency is actually to the Office of Special Counsel, which is investigating allegations of retaliation by Weiss and the IRS. And so Weiss took that investigation and crafted his legal filing to make it sound like the exact opposite, to make it sound like they were investigating the whistleblowers.
So Weiss made it seem like in public that the whistleblowers were under investigation when in fact it was Weiss himself who is currently under investigation?
Yes, but now to be fair, Weiss may not know the extent of the retaliation investigation or the retaliation allegations. OSC keeps those very close hold, but their investigation is into, the allegations are that both Weiss and the IRS retaliated against Gary Shapley.
Yes. So to the extent that your client is a party to the investigation, it's as a victim.
Yes, precisely. And Weiss completely turned it the other way to give the public the impression that our clients were under investigation, so, implying that they had done something wrong, which, of course, was the subject of Hunter Biden's separate lawsuit in D.C. against the whistleblowers, claiming that they violated taxpayer privacy laws.
And they did not. They did everything appropriately.
They absolutely did everything appropriately, and that was part of the subject of my letter to Attorney General Garland, was pointing out that they had, until now, the Justice Department, again, who the whistleblowers blew the whistle on, had not given a full defense. Finally, Friday night, the Justice Department did acknowledge in a new filing that the whistleblowers, they intended to defend the whistleblowers' conduct, that there is a whistleblower protection under the taxpayer privacy laws, and that they had followed that exception.
Now, I want to remind people what Gary Shapley and Joseph Ziegler alleged. It was that there was very unusual interference into the IRS investigation of Hunter Biden that these two had never seen throughout their career in any other tax investigation. Is that right?
That's right. And they have a collective, a couple decades of experience in all of those. They are on the crack team for the IRS investigating international tax fraud, and they had never seen anything like the slow rolling, the interference, and then the political conflicts of interest in this case.
Right, and the efforts by people like, Leslie Wolf is who they allege did this, Assistant U.S. Attorney under David Weiss, who was apparently telling them not to dig into anything that connected to Joe Biden, not to investigate Dad, or perhaps getting in the way of the investigation by alerting the people around the Bidens ahead of major investigative steps, that those steps were going to take place within the days to come.
That's exactly right. And if you recall, it was when David Weiss learned that for more than a year, Gary Shapley had been making protected whistleblower disclosures up his chain of command, saying that the things Leslie Wolf and others were doing seemed inappropriate. It was when Weiss first learned about that he demanded the IRS turn over Shapley's emails. We now know he, at the time, demanded that they be taken off the case. He took steps to retaliate against them then, which is why we've always had this concern about Weiss's role in all of this. And now he's the same one claiming out there that they're under investigation.
Were there other damages to them other than being taken off the case itself, which is awful that you're being removed from the work that you're doing did they lose pay or anything else?
There is a promotion that Gary Shapley applied for, and this is out there publicly. It hasn't received a lot of attention, but part of the disclosure or the retaliation complaint with OSC is that he applied for a job as the head of this international tax team related to the work he was doing, and that despite his clear qualifications for the job, after Weiss's involvement, this all came in the same time when Weiss was pounding on the IRS's door asking for Shapley's emails and other things, that he was someone else who was significantly less qualified was selected for the job. So again, that's not been a major focus of that. Obviously, that's not central to anything, to the Hunter Biden allegations, yes. But it was really, that's kind of textbook retaliation, right? And those are the sort of things that, I in the executive branch as a judge of these sorts of cases have to rule on all the time.
So in a case like that, if you are passed over for a promotion that you are well qualified for, would that be a violation of the law that your whistleblower complaint served as the predicate for that decision?
Yes, that's what the complaint is, to go to the Office of Special Counsel and say, this was a non-selection, this was a decision, a hiring that was not based on merit, and so you need to investigate this. And that's why OSC is gathering documents, preparing for interviews, that as well as another thing that OSC has jurisdiction over is that any federal employers are not allowed to put gag orders on their employees and say, hey, you're not allowed to talk to Congress, you're not allowed to talk to others. And that's the other thing, is right after Shapley and Ziegler were taken off the case, IRS managers told them, you can't go outside of the chain of command. You're not supposed to talk to others outside about this. And so OSC required the IRS to rescind those communications because they violated the law. And those are the very communications that, along with this implication of an ongoing investigation, that Weiss also cited in his March filing to say, look, the IRS has been all along instructing these guys, admonishing these guys, and so again, that's further part of OSC's investigation, is whether there was further intent to retaliate by trying to shut these guys up.
Tristan, let me move to another major piece of news on whistleblowers in the Biden administration today. The Justice Department Office of Inspector General has just released a memo, according to I'm quoting here from one of your colleagues at Empower Oversight, Jason Foster, on the FBI's failure to follow the law when suspending security clearances in retaliation for whistleblower disclosures. It sounds like, based on what I'm seeing, the summaries of this report today, it's that the Biden administration has been wrongfully punishing whistleblowers who bring legitimate complaints forward. What can you tell us?
So a year ago, approximately, I testified before the House Weaponization Subcommittee of the Judiciary Committee with Chairman Jim Jordan, and I testified alongside two of our clients, Marcus Allen and Steve Friend, and then Garrett O'Boyle, another FBI whistleblower we had worked with, was the fourth witness of that hearing. And all of them talked about how their security clearances had been suspended. The day after that public hearing, I went with Marcus Allen and then with Steve Friend to the Justice Department Inspector General's office for interviews, because they were, again, alleging that they had been retaliated through the use of their security clearance. And so ultimately, Steve Friend decided to move on to another job. But we have been fighting for Marcus Allen ever since for him to be reinstated. And this report definitely was a vindication of what we knew all along, that Marcus Allen's security clearance never should have been suspended, that FBI has been using these mercilessly, not only to suspend whistleblowers, but once their clearance is suspended, the FBI tells them, well, we can't pay you while we go through this process. And one of the things that the IG report highlights from Inspector General Horowitz is that the average time from when the FBI suspends someone's clearance and then makes an actual decision on the clearance. So a suspension is supposed to be while the FBI makes a decision whether to reinstate it, if they say, well, we were wrong to suspend it, or whether they decide to revoke it. The average time for that is 17 months. And that is how long Marcus Allen went before he got a proposed revocation. So that whole time they are without pay, they're not allowed to work, and they have to get permission from the FBI even to take another job. So they're totally in limbo.
So if you make a whistleblower complaint and then the government retaliates against you, and you say, hey, this is like legitimate, I'm being retaliated against, you're going to lose pay? Like, in other words, they're going to presume guilt on your part rather than innocence as the process goes on.
Yeah, that's right. And the real, to kind of tie these two things together, I mentioned the Office of Special Counsel earlier. OSC has these different forms of investigation, retaliation that they can investigate. OSC cannot investigate the retaliation by security clearance. OSC also doesn't have jurisdiction over the FBI. So FBI whistleblowers are doubly punished. A whistleblower somewhere else at any other agency, if their clearance gets suspended, they have to go through this process that doesn't have the strong protections that there are for other types of whistleblower retaliation. And if you're at the FBI, you are way out of luck. So they are, again, like you say, there's no presumption. There's no way for them to overcome the presumption that they are guilty. They just have to wait indefinitely.
And Marcus Allen, let's go over his story again. If my memory serves correctly, he was a Marine, correct? And then
that's right.
And then he was in the FBI, and his claim is that he raised concerns about January 6th internally at the FBI. Is that right?
Yeah. So if you go back to 2021, now we know so much more, right? But at the time, there was this I guess even before the reporting, about a month or 6 weeks, I forget, Director Chris Wray, director of the FBI, went before the Senate, and there were questions about if only the FBI had confidential informants present at the Capitol on January 6th. And Director Wray sidestepped the question. He implied that they didn't at all. Then during the year, there started to be some reporting from a couple of different sources. There were 2 stories during the year that suggested maybe there were some folks. And then in September of 2021, the New York Times came out with a significant story saying there were, in fact, multiple confidential informants of the FBI's on January 6th. Now we know that there were like over 20 or something like that. But so Marcus Allen forwarded that information to his supervisors. He was a staff operations specialist supposed to help gather intelligence in the Charlotte, North Carolina FBI office. He forwarded that saying, it appears there's a significant chance that the Washington, D.C. elements of our organization have not been fully forthcoming. And that alone, just sharing that, it seemed like Director Wray had not been fully candid in his testimony to Congress. That was the basis for the FBI suspending his security clearance, which at this point has gone on for 2 years.
Because he was guilty of a thought crime for sharing a news article?
Yeah, he questioned the director of the FBI. He blew the whistle to his colleagues saying, it seems like there's more to this. It seems like he may have been dishonest. And that alone is why he was suspended. Yeah,
a guy who actually served our country and who cares about it. And he was suspended. And to this day, is that the case? He hasn't been paid ever since?
That's absolutely right. He finally got, again, a year ago, as our hearing was upcoming, the FBI finally took the step after a year of moving from suspension to proposed revocation, as they call it, to say, okay, we've made our decision now. We're going to take it away. We've been trying to appeal that ever since, but he's not received a penny in pay since then. And we have still been pushing forward. And of course, one of the big things that was so traumatic for him was that whether it came from the FBI, whether it was leaked by Congress, but right before we testified, a number of facts or alleged facts, I guess the FBI's spin on these clearance revocations from Garrett O'Boyle, from Marcus Allen was leaked. The New York Times reported on that. And one of the things that they alleged about Marcus Allen was that he was disloyal to the United States. And again, for a Marine who was discharged honorably, he received multiple medals for his intelligence work. That's the worst thing someone could possibly say about someone who loves our country so much.
In fact, let me play that audio. I've got Matt Gaetz asking Marcus Allen during his congressional testimony about that very thing. Here it is.
Mr. Allen, we just astonishingly heard a Democrat on this committee question your allegiance to the United States. How many tours in Iraq did you do?
I did 2 tours in Iraq, sir.
And for how many decades have you held a security clearance?
For 2 decades, sir.
Ever been called into question before?
No, sir.
And you also received the Employee of the Year award for the Charlotte field office, is that right?
That is correct, sir.
Did you receive any medals during your service for the Marine Corps and the United States Navy?
I did, sir. As a member of the Marine Corps, I received a Navy Commendation Medal and a Navy Achievement Medal.
Seems to me your allegiance to the United States is pretty well established over multiple decades, wearing the uniform, fighting for our country, and I am proud that you continue to fight for our country as a whistleblower here, making a disclosure to the United States Congress.
And ever since then, ever since he was punished by the Biden administration, they cut off his paycheck. That's been his status now for years. He's been draining his retirement savings, according to his congressional testimony, just to survive.
Yes. Exactly. It's heartbreaking. And this is, again, this IG report finally, again, it's something we have known for quite some time, but shows it's not just him. Again, we've seen this in the case of Steve Friend, in the case of Garrett O'Boyle, but this shows there's a widespread practice at the FBI, whether it's because of blowing the whistle or, frankly, some of the other situations we've seen is just because of, again, thought crimes they didn't like, people who were reluctant to get the vaccine, people who seemed conservative in their beliefs, people who seemed religious. Those are all indicators of the type of people that the FBI has pushed out, and in many ways it's been through suspending their security clearance. Yeah,
the law's apparently not good enough to protect these whistleblowers. They need guys like you, Tristan Levitt, to stand up for them too. Thank you very much, Tristan. Good to have you with us as always, sir. All right, let's see. Coming up on the program, moments away, we've got Brett Tolman with us, former U.S. Attorney, Executive Director of Right on Crime. He says that Alvin Bragg has made a huge mistake by allowing that loudmouth, Michael Cohen, to take the stand for now 2 days Brett Tolman will break down the latest from that trial in New York just moments away on the Vince Coglianese Show. Stay with us.